Alright guys, what is up? And I am back here with another video, and today we're going to be talking about the 5 best used sport bikes you guys can buy. Yes, used. So in the beginning, I'm going to kind of talk about the cheaper bikes and kind of go down the list to the more expensive bikes. Now keep in mind, there are some dreamer bikes on this list, some bikes that I just like and wanted to put on this list. This is just sport bikes, guys. So most of these bikes aren't going to be for beginners. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hope you guys enjoy this one. See you guys in a second. Real quick too, I just got a new microphone, so we're gonna be testing this out. Had a little wind issue when I get to higher speed, so I'm hoping that's fixed. Got the purple Panda, baby, let's go. But this video is not about the mic, it's about the bikes. So the first bike we're gonna be talking about, guys, is a 2003 to 2005 CBR600, all right? First off, this bike is extremely cheap. It's a little bit older, yes, but it is a little bit cheaper. When the bikes are older, you can get them for a better deal. And we're always trying to get a better deal, you know? Alright, so that being said, you guys can get this bike for around $3,500 to $4,000 I've seen on Facebook Marketplace. If you guys are looking to buy used bikes, Facebook Marketplace is a great place for that. Or you can go Craigslist. I've had a few friends that have owned this bike. I've actually had a sibling that has owned this bike. So I know that this bike is reliable. What was that guy doing? Not supposed to do that. Yeah, anyways, so I know that this bike's reliable because I've known people that have owned this bike. My brother's owned this bike. A few friends have owned this bike. Any Honda you buy is usually going to be reliable. This bike is a little bit older, so it does not have a steering dampener like this bike. This bike has a built-in steering dampener. Basically what that does is when you're going faster, it just basically stiffens for you, and it loosens up when you're going a little bit slower. So it's built in on this bike. On that bike, it's not. You'd have to get an adjustable one. If you wanted to stiffen it up, you just stiffen it up. If you wanted to loosen it up, you just loosen it up. So that's one thing about it. It does not have a built-in steering dampener. Now, this bike at one point was mass produced, so there's a ton of these bikes out there, so parts should not be a problem getting for this bike. So one thing I noticed about it is when you sit on it, it's kind of like pushing on your inner thighs, which I don't like. Another thing too is the mirrors are kind of small, visibility's not that great in them. All sport bikes are kind of like that though. We'll go through Old Town, I guess. Now let me tell you what everyone wants to know. How fast is it? It has around 116 horsepower, which is pretty fast for an old bike. It's a lot of horsepower for an older bike. But horsepower is just a number. It really matters about how the power is put down. So it's a fast bike, it's a sport bike, you know? So that is a great bike if you're looking for a good deal. Alright, so that's going to bring us into the second bike, and that's going to be the 2008 to 2010 Suzuki GSXR600. I'm only going to talk about the 08 or 09 because for some reason the 2010 is just not like made in America. They don't have that bike in America. It's like extremely rare. I don't know why. All right, so the thing with that bike is there are a few recalls. The first one is with the brakes, and the second one is with the rectifier slash regulator. Basically, the regulator slash rectifier is in a spot where it gets too hot. They move it for you for free. They fix the issue, and then they also rebuild your brakes. So that's not that big of a deal. Once you get that fixed, then it's a great bike. For some reason on the 06, 07, they don't fix that for you. I don't know why. So I would stay away from that bike. Stay away from the 06, 07 GSXR600 slash 750. So the generation before that bike, the 06, 07, is a little bit smaller. They made this bike a little bit bigger. And my friend owned this bike, and he said that he actually thought that that bike was more comfortable. That bike's gonna cost you around $5,000. That's just a ballpark. It really depends on the condition of the bike, guys. They made some great color schemes for that bike as well. And I wanted to mention something about fairings and color schemes with bikes. All right, so they don't make a lot of colors for each bike. I know that that bike is not green, so if I saw that bike and it was green, I'd be like, oh, hey, what's going on here? I would look a little bit harder. Usually any time when somebody replaces the fairings slash graphics, usually the bike was down. That's a sign that the bike was either wrecked or down or something's going on. If you see a bike with all the stock graphics and fairings, and it's like in great condition, that's a really, really good sign. So let's talk about how fast that bike is. That bike has around 109 horsepower. Pretty fast bike, man. Any sport bike is usually pretty fast. One thing I forgot to mention about the Gixxer, guys, I wanted to mention real quick. That was the first year that bike came out with modes, the 2008. They came out with modes that year. They came out with A, B, and C mode, and basically it's just different modes to tame down the bike. So if you, let's say you were experienced but you weren't that experienced, or it was raining or something like that, and you wanted to cut down the power / throttle response, you have different modes. A mode's full power, B mode's a little less, and C mode is the slowest mode, I believe. So that's kind of nice. That's going to bring us into the third bike, guys. Now we're going to get into the 1000s now. This is one of my favorite Gixxers ever made, and that is the 2005-2006 GSXR1000. Now there are a few things with this bike. This bike has some pretty serious recalls. So the biggest problem with this bike is they had a frame recall. Basically what happens is people would do wheelies, they come down on the wheelie, and the frame would end up cracking when they would come down on a wheelie. And that's, you know, that's not good. So basically what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna check out the frame. You're gonna wanna check out the frame on any bike, but when you see that bike, you're gonna wanna look a little harder. So basically Suzuki puts a bracket on the bike, somewhere around here, the neck of the bike, that's where they would crack. If you see a bracket on the bike, you're good, the recall's been completed. And they also have another recall as well with the brakes, which the recalls are done for free, guys, so that's not that big of a deal as long as everything checks out. The thing I like about this bike is extremely ahead of its time. This bike won Bike of the Year in 2005. This is the first time they put the gear indicator, the steering dampener, and integrated the signals all in 1 year, I believe. So that bike is going to cost you around $5,000 to $6,000, and that's just a ballpark, guys, because these are used bikes. It's hard to pinpoint exactly like what it's going to cost, because some are going to be in better condition than others, some are going to have lower miles, some are going to, you know, etc. So it's hard to pin an exact point, but I'd say around $5,000 to $6,000 you should pay for that bike. So yeah, just be careful with that bike. It's not like it's a bad bike, but there are some things you need to be careful with that bike. All right, moving on to the fourth bike, guys, and that is a 2011 to 2012 BMW 1000rr. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, why would I buy that bike used? Well, I've had a few friends that have bought that bike used. One of them bought it from a private party, didn't have any issues, and the other one bought it from a dealership and had no issues. Yeah, so they were both in excellent condition. None of them had any issues with it. That bike is not a Japanese bike, it's a German bike, so parts are going to be more expensive. The bike's going to cost a little bit more. You're probably going to spend, for that bike used, you're probably going to spend, and remember all these bikes are used, probably going to spend around $9,000. It could be a little less, could be a little more, depending on the condition. That bike even has heated hand grips. That bike is the full package pretty much. It's like the Lamborghini of bikes. It has some different modes on there. There's one mode in specific you have to take to the dealership to get the bike completely unlocked. It basically just turns off all the other features that it has, like the wheelie control, you know, ABS. It basically just completely unlocks the bike, which nobody needs because that bike's just insane. That bike has around 196 horsepower, so that bike is just insane, crazy fast. This next bike is my favorite bike on the whole list. This next bike, and I know you're gonna be like, what, that bike? I'm like, yeah, man, that bike. And that is the 2016 ZX-10R. I love that bike. I just love that bike. Something about green and black is just, I don't know, I just love that color scheme. Bike is super photogenic, looks amazing, has all the goodies. That bike is really, really fast. It has around 200 horsepower. If you're not experienced, you just don't get that bike, you know. Has all the gadgets on there too, wheelie control, has cornering ABS, all that stuff. And that bike was completely revamped for the year. New frame, new suspension, and new engine. So that bike's completely redone for that year. So that's a great bike. And the gauge cluster looks awesome on that bike. You know, it's not a Ducati and it's not a BMW, but it's the next best thing. And that's a Kawasaki ZX-10r. I just love it the way it looks, man. It looks awesome, awesome looking bike. That one doesn't have any known issues. I haven't seen any issues with that or heard any issues with that, so that seems like a pretty good bike. So that one's probably my favorite bike on this list. So I'm gonna throw one more bike on this list, guys, and it's gonna be this bike that I'm on, a 2015 Suzuki GSXR600. I actually researched the most about Gixxers. I know the most about them. That's just kind of what I wanted, so I did a lot of research on it. That's kind of why I got this bike. Out of all the Gixxers, this bike bike seems to be one of the better ones, and the reason why is because it doesn't have any issues. It has no issues at all. I've owned this bike for a few years now, haven't had one issue with it. Starts up every single time. This bike has been essentially the same for 10 years, and I think it's been the same for 10 years because the earlier Gixxers, they had some issues. And this bike, when they got to this bike, they figured it all out. There's no issues with this bike. So that's why I think it's a great reason to buy this bike. Doesn't have ABS, doesn't have any of the gadgets. It's just a bike and 2 wheels. To me, that's all I need, you know? I don't need all that other stuff. I'm just casually riding around town. This bike cost me around $6,500 used. Like I said, I got it when it was 4 years old, so it was a little bit newer to me. You could probably get it around for like $6,500, somewhere around there still probably. Redline's around 15K, which is pretty crazy if you look down here. It's around 15,000 where it maxes out on the RPMs. So it's a fast bike, reliable, looks really, really good. This is just an excellent street bike. It's not the best track bike. For an overall street bike, it's really just a great bike. And it's pretty comfortable too. That is gonna wrap it up for this video. Let me know what you guys think. You guys agree? You guys disagree? Which bike would you want on this list? Let me know in the comment section. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.